Voilà, eh bien, je suis à l'expo, comme prévu, au sommet EAF au Good. Voilà un petit peu où les choses se passent aujourd'hui.
The next session, we are going to be exploring another different thing. We're going to go with the robots. So anyone here knows what a chia seed is? Raise your hand. Okay, so a few of you, great. Now, how small is a chia seed? Can you really give me a sense of how small? Just tiny. Okay, so these robots are going to be 10 times smaller than a tiny chia seed. Now imagine that. Imagine it moving, imagine it responding, acting. So if we can build machines at that scale, and we can, what would medicine look like? And system engineering at the University of Pennsylvania and the director of the Penn Nanorobotics Lab.
So I'm going to tell you a story about very small robots. It's always good to begin a story with a motivation. And so for me, that starts with a very fond memory I have from my childhood, coming face to face with this guy. So when I was about 8 years old, I did this after-school summer class where we went out into the creek that ran through my elementary school. We pulled up little drops of pond water, and we put them under a microscope. And I remember staring at this. This is a microorganism called a rotifer. They're pretty common. They live almost everywhere on Earth. There's saltwater ones, freshwater ones. And this particular one is out hunting for food. You can see this little cluster of things in front of it that's bacteria, and it's trying to scoop it up into its mouth with these little hairs on the front of its face. And I remember being completely blown away by this. And still as an adult and a professional scientist, I could watch this movie forever and still be amazed by it. Every time you look into a microscope, nature reminds you of this profound and important fact that just because something is small doesn't mean it's not complicated. This is a creature that can sense, can make decisions, but its whole world fits in a drop of pond water. Now, as an engineer, I think that's not only deeply fascinating, but also important. Right? This is the length scale where all of biology starts. And so I want to know how we build things to live in this world. Nature did it by millions of years of evolution, but how can humans build something tiny and complex for ourselves? How do we build a tiny robot? Well, if you want to build any robot, you have to build two things. You got to build a brains and a body. And by brains, I mean the information processing systems of the robot. So the computers, the sensors, the ways the robot learns about its world. By body, it should also be clear what I mean, the things that actually moves it around, let it interact with its world. If you just have brains, you're a computer. If you just have a body, you're a machine, but you put the two together and you're a robot. And so if we want to build a small robot, the question is really, how do we make these two parts small? And so what I want to do a little bit in the beginning of the talk is talk about the progress humans have made in miniaturizing these two individual components. And beginning the story that way comes with a little bit of good news off the bat, which is one of these two problems is solved for you. So show of hands, who thinks it's the brains? It's going to be easier, the two parts. Okay, one guy, great. And who thinks it's the bronze? The muscle is going to be the easier part. We have 7, great, okay, maybe like 20. Yeah, most people think it is the body, but remarkably that's not true. It's actually the other way around. And I'll show you why. I could explain why, but it's easiest just to skip to the point and show you the world record for the tiniest computer that humans have ever built. Not could build, have built. It's a record that was set in 2017 by folks at the University of Michigan, a project called the Micromote, which they began in the 90s. So they've been building small computers for some time. And this big white thing next to the computer on the right, that's a grain of rice. And so you can imagine this is quite a small object. It's about 1/3 of a millimeter in its longest dimension. And it doesn't quite look like a computer, but that's because it's so small. But if you ask what kinds of parts a computer has, they're all there. There's a little tiny processor here. There's a little tiny bit of memory. There's a little tiny sensor system on it in the form of a temperature sensor and a pressure sensor. There's even a little tiny LED, that's this glass thing here that allows it to transmit data back to you that you can transmit data back down to it. And so it has all of the functioning aspects of a computing system in a space that's actually not much bigger than that rotifer I showed you on slide 1. And so as a roboticist, this is absolutely amazing. These are all of the components that you would need to build an intelligent robot. Sensing, memory, computing, all of it. This is a consequence of miniaturizing computing parts. For 60 years, we've had Moore's law. It's allowed us to pack more computing power into a given amount of space. But there's a converse to that statement, which goes by the name of Bell's law, which is that the volume of computing systems has been reducing by several orders of magnitude, to where about every decade or so we go down by about 3 orders of magnitude in terms of the total volume of a computer. In other words, we started at big things like mainframes, and we worked our way down to laptops, we worked our way down to smartphones in 2010, and if you extrapolated the curve, and in fact this figure is from a paper written in 2016, it predicts somewhere around 2020 we should cross into sub-millimeter dimensions, and indeed we did. That's exactly what happened. And so if you're looking at the question, how do you build a tiny robot, Moore's law solved half the problem for you. There's an amazing technology platform for information processing systems in the form of semiconductor microelectronics. And it's pre-built. It's waiting for you to just go and use it. The hard part is actually the body. It's figuring out how to build a system that's going to move this robot around that plays nice with those microelectronics. And the blunt fact is that most of the things we have for movement either don't work at small scales or fail to work well with semiconductor components. So the circumstance you sort of wind up in is you have this phenomenally amazing system for information processing, and then a bunch of things that allow you to move, but nothing that plays nice together. And largely this is the problem that my lab tries to resolve. So for the next 24 minutes, I don't have enough time to tell you about all of the different things that we've worked on to address this problem. I'm going to pick one story, one particular instance where we were able to mesh the power of semiconductor computing with the capacity to move to build the world's smallest intelligent micro-robot. And so we looked at this problem very carefully and we said, okay, what are we really trying to do? And the answer is we're trying to make something that controllably moves with electric fields that's very, very simple. And so we looked around at the physics of what goes on at small length scales. When you get down tiny, the world's a little bit different than the one that we're familiar with. And we singled out one particular mechanism that looked promising for building a robot that could play nice with CMOS. And so this was the idea, is there's a very well-known piece of physics that if you take a particle and you put it in water and you apply an electric field, it typically will move with a velocity that's proportional to the electric field. It's called electrophoresis. It's how we separate DNA strands. And what we realized about this piece of physics is that there's nothing in the description that actually says that the electric field needs to be made by something external. Could in principle be made by the particle itself. And so that's exactly what we did. We took basically a piece of silicon glass, we put little solar cells on it, we attached 2 metal electrodes to make it act kind of like a battery. There's a plus and minus terminal. And then lo and behold, if you shine light at this object, you find out off it goes, swimming around, propelling itself by converting light into electricity and electricity into propulsion. This is good, it's a good start, something that's moving, but if you have a robot, it's not enough to just simply move, you have to be able to controllably move. And so we said, okay, what if we took 2 of them and we glued them together? Well, now if you could illuminate, say, the 2 different sides of this object with different amounts, you'd get different electric fields on the 2 sides. Since the field is proportional to the velocity, you'd get it wanting to swim at 2 different speeds. And so we're not kind of like a wheeled car, right? Where if you have a toy car and you make one motor spin faster than the other, the thing's going to turn at a rate proportional to the difference in velocity. And so one of my grad students built this cute little demo where he took these 2 little engines, glued them together, and then if you look at that blue box, that's the box where he's going to illuminate it with a laser. We filter the laser out so we don't blind the camera, but trust us, it's there. And then you can write a computer program that tracks this robot and adjusts how much light it wants to deliver to each of the engines to guide it to specific waypoints. And so in this movie, we're going to guide the robot around to the locations that Will has chosen, and when the robot arrives, it turns off, and then we give it a new location to go. Now, because light is easy to multiplex, your graduate students can get really easily carried away, and so my students started making these cute demos of little micro robots flying around in formation, like they're in a marching band or something like that, converging on the other side. And then when you really start to worry and wonder if maybe he needs to graduate sometime soon, when they're making little robot conga lines. So each of these robots is following the robot ahead of it, and the one in the front is the one that Will pilots around wherever he wants it to go. Now, this is cute, it's fun, your student's having a good time, but presumably some people in the audience are wondering, what happened to this? Where's the intelligence, right? These things are sort of puppets, they're marionettes that you're controlling with a laser, right? They don't satisfy the criterion you gave in the beginning of the talk for being smart robots. But here's the beauty of electronics. If you want to change the thing that's controlling this robot, you simply change what's powering it. That's it. You don't have to change anything else about how it works. And so to go from the simple movie you just watched to something that's intelligent, we simply have to swap the power supply. It's as easy as changing the batteries. And so in 2019, we actually called these folks at the University of Michigan. We said, hey, do you want to work together in building a micro robot? And after about 5 years of collaboration, we managed to build this. So this is a robot that we call SmartBot. It's kind of an inside joke. It's not that smart, but it's smarter than most of the other things people have built. And again, it's quite small. It's only about 200 microns, so 0.2 millimeters by 0.3 millimeters. So if you like to think in hair's widths, it's about 3 hair's widths tall by 2 hair's widths across, or about the same size as the rotifer on the first slide. And in that space, we were able to fit a bunch of really cool stuff. So everywhere you see one of these little squares, that's a solar cell. And that's where this robot gets its power. And we engineered this robot to be extremely low power, so it operates in a total energy budget of about 100 nanowatts. It means 2 things. One is that if you take this robot outside in bright daylight, it will actually wake up, boot up, and do what you've asked it to do, which is pretty cool. It's power autonomous. And the other is that it's metabolically equivalent to a paramecium. So if you look at the total energy a paramecium consumes in its day-to-day business, it's about the same as the robot. Robot has some sensors. So it's got 2 sets. It has thermometers on either side of it, and it also has little voltmeters that can measure electric fields in the water it moves around it. And you make 2 types of measurements. You can either ask what's the nominal temperature around you, or you can also ask, is my left side hotter than my right side? This is useful if you want to say navigate a gradient and find a hot spot. This could be other sensors. We've designed ones to sense chemicals, to sense pH, biomarkers. This was our first robot, so we picked something simple that we were confident we could do well. There's a communication system on this robot. So there's a special solar cell that you can send instructions down to it in the form of flashing light. It's how we write programs to it. So essentially, if you modulate a light pattern, you can send a little code to the robot that says, okay, I want you to listen, and then other fluctuations it interprets as bits. It has 4 sets of electrodes, which it uses to generate that electrokinetic propulsion mechanism. So just like in the previous slide where we had pluses and minuses to steer, it's the same idea, except now they can be controlled by the robot. And this giant tangled mess of circuitry living in through here, this is a computer. It's a computer in the complete sense of the word. There's a little processor, a little bit of memory. The processor, incidentally, is not super far off from what you'd find in a smartwatch. And the memory is a glorious 400 bits. So if you go back in time to the early 70s, we're basically that kind of a computer. But 400 bits was enough to get people to the moon, and it's actually quite a lot to do in a small robotics package. Okay, so once you've got this thing packaged up, you can get rid of that stupid laser and this marionette control policy and let the robot control itself. And so the first class of programs that we wrote were very simple ones where we targeted turning on and off different electrodes in the robot to see which kinds of ways it could move. And so if you have 4 electrodes and you can set the polarity between plus and minus, there are 14 unique states that you could do, and we ran through all of them. So what we found is the following, is if you set 2 electrodes high and 2 low, your robot swims forward. If you reverse it, it swims backwards. If you set 2 on the left side high and 2 on the right side low, it slides across the lateral axis. If you set 3 high and 1 low, you get a sort of arcing behavior where the robot moves forward and turns at the same time. And if you set 3 low and 1 high, you get a turning behavior where you sit and basically pivot in place around that wheel. Now, if you're not a roboticist, this may not be impressive, but if you are a roboticist, you know that this is complete control over all your degrees of freedom. If you can move in the plane, the only things you can do are you can move forward, you can move side to side, and you can turn. And that means that we can position this robot wherever we want it to go in whatever orientation we like, which is very useful. You can also, of course, string steps of these programs together to build more sophisticated robot behaviors. Because again, this isn't us telling it what to do, we're writing a program and then the robot is executing. So for example, you can write the robot to do a little dance where it moves forward for some period of time, then it rotates by 90 degrees, it's going to rotate, and then it slides across the lateral dimension. Now this may not look like much, but I'll remind you, if we were to put a paramecium up on the screen, it'd be about that big. That's the relative size of this robot, choosing all of its actions for itself, choosing all decisions outside of the program that we wrote. Now, this is super cool, but there's still sort of a part of this that's missing a flavor, right? Which is using a computer to go through a sequence of programs. It's kind of like a wind-up doll, right? It's cool, but it's not really doing what's characteristic of a robot. What's characteristic of a robot and why we put computers on them is so that they can use information they've gathered from their environment to change their actions, right? The whole idea is, as a robot moves around, it's supposed to sense the world around it and then alter its behavior as it executes. And so you'd hope that going through all this work of building this tiny robot with a tiny computer, you'd be able to do something similar, where the robot changes its actions on the basis of what it sees. And so this is sort of the state of the art for microrobotics in terms of like robots making their own decisions. It's a program that we wrote to demonstrate this concept of what we would call closed-loop control, where a robot is going to try to climb a temperature gradient, so go find a hot spot, but you can imagine this could be any sensor signal that you like, just using measurements that it makes on its own. So the program's really simple. It's basically the robot will run around for a period of time, makes a measurement of temperature, and then depending on whether the temperature is hotter or colder, it will turn to the left or turn to the right before moving forward again. And if you execute this program over time, what you find is the robot initially facing the wrong way will reorient itself until it's facing the correct direction to go into the colder region, and then shoot, off it goes, swimming in the right direction to move down gradient. Now again, this is not us telling this robot what to do. This is us writing a program to the robot saying go and then letting it make all of its choices. And so we're super excited about this, right? This is the first step to being able to do targeted drug delivery, to saying, go find this biomolecule that's associated with cancer. When you get there, deliver the drugs. All kinds of other things where a human doesn't have to be in the loop, where the robot makes the decisions on its own. Now, I'm hoping that some of you think these little robots are cool, that maybe you enjoy them, you like them. Maybe enough to wonder if you could have one of your own. Could it be possible? Like, when will I get my own tiny robot? And undoubtedly, if that's what you're thinking, the next thought would be, how much do they cost? How expensive are they? Well, I have a piece of good news, and that is that they are very inexpensive. One of these two things is much more expensive than the other. And so each of these machines winds up costing under a penny because of how we build them. We build them the same way that we make microelectronics. And so we have a long-standing tradition in our lab where if you come and visit us, we will go and give you one of our robots on a penny as a reminder that the penny costs more than the robot itself. All it costs me is one penny to give. Now, since I know that many of you will not be visiting us in Philadelphia, I have asked the people organizing AI for Good if we could do a demo where we could simulate that experience, and one lucky audience member could come to the stage and collect a robot of their own to take home with them. So in this petri dish, there's something like, I don't know, 30, 40 robots hanging out in there. And as you can see, here's one of them living on the microscope, which proof to you is live. There it is. And I'm wondering if there's any volunteer at all who would be interested. Super fast. I think it's gonna have to be you. That was like, you did it immediately. So would you please come to the stage. Hey, I'm Mark. What's your Andre, nice to meet you. So Andre, have we ever met before? He says no. So we have no relationship. So you're gonna hunt for a micro robot today. What will you do with it? You'll frame it. Okay, excellent. Yeah, don't tell too many of your friends that there's a robot on the coin. They may worry about you. So, as everybody knows, micro robots are hunted with pipettes. So you have a choice. You can take le petit or le grand, the smaller. And the trick is that you're going to want to press the plunger first. Then you can take the robot of your choosing, come up right in front of it, and if you release the plunger, the fluid is going to suck the robot up into the pipette. And wait. And then you must, dispense it. Well, if you want to put it on a Swiss board, that's fine with me. Yeah, they don't make them anymore, so they're quite, they're special now. Okay, so. Oh, I think you, let it go. You got him. Keep pushing, just push. Excellent. Okay, let's put him up so everybody can see. Right. And there's your micro robot. Right there, you dropped it right into Lincoln's ear. Well done, sir. Rounds of applause. Okay, I will give this to you after the talk when it tries out. Excellent, well done. For anybody else who wants some, there's something like 300 more micro robots where that came from. You're welcome to find me after the talk, and you can fish for your own micro robot. So, good. Switch back to the slides, please. Okay, so what is this building towards? I mean, this is really fun, it's really cool, but really think about what we have here. This is a technology that is extremely small, mass manufacturable, and capable of manipulating, moving, and sensing at a very small scale. And so in the last 5 minutes or so, I want to give you this was one success story, a more zoomed out view of the other things that go on in my lab, and kind of our vision of where microrobotics is going to take us into the future. So the one thing I didn't tell you is that while this is one type of propulsion that we've built, we've actually been quite busy in this space. So we've developed a wide variety of other ways for microrobots to move. Some of them are legged, some of them swim, some of them use sort of no moving parts, solid state type mechanisms like electrokinetic flows. And what we're trying to do is build a toolkit a library of components that would allow these robots to operate in essentially any environment. So we've designed ones that can operate saltwater, freshwater, biological and conditions. We're building ones that can walk around on land. We're trying to build ones soon that can fly. And we want to be able to be in a position where anyone could specify what they want to build, and we can tell you the components and sensors that are ready to go to be integrated with electronics to get there. Now we have rules in our lab for how we go and do this. You're not allowed to just build any component that gets the job done. They have to be compatible with the techniques that we use for building semiconductor components. The reason why is that if you do that, then in the same way that you can make circuits for your iPhone that have hundreds of billions of parts inside of them and yet have them be affordable to everybody on Earth, you can now build robots where you build hundreds of millions of them all at once. So typically when we build these devices, we don't build one robot at a time, we build a 4-inch disc about the size of your hand with 1 million robots on it. We dice it up into little 1-inch discs, 10,000 robots on them. And that's why we can give them away, because they're made massively in parallel. You can make all of these robots the same, you can make them all different. Just like circuits, the complexity is essentially free. And so we're looking forward to the day when you can co-locate a bunch of robots to do different tasks, build them and send them out to different people. And we're getting quite good at this too. So this is the robots early in their fabrication. This is what they look like at the end. So here we're using some chemicals to dissolve away a support layer underneath these robots. And you can see once it dissolves away, they all fold up into your little tiny robot army. We typically average something like a 90% yield, which is how we're able to maintain this cost effectiveness of what we built. And so the message for you is, in the near future, this is going to be a commercial commodity. This is going to be something anyone can buy, and then anyone can program to do what they want using the onboard computation. What do we want to program them for? Well, the use case we think is the most promising are things in the biomedical world. Our lab has looked at a variety of different applications. We've looked at micro-robots to assist in peripheral nerve repair, pulling nerves back to damaged muscle targets. We've looked at micro-robots that can go into root canals and check if the dentist did a good job. We've looked at, we're starting to think about micro-robots that can assist with extremely drug-resistant cancers, trying to grind them down mechanically instead of having to rely on drugs. I think the big vision here as to why this is useful is I'll remind you that your body is a collection of cells. It's a collection of objects that live and operate at this size scale. And so by having a little avatar that humans can control of the fundamental length of biology is going to be a very powerful medical technology. More broadly, I would leave you with sort of this idea, which I put at the bottom of the slide. This was in my job talk when I interviewed at Penn. It's the thing I remind all of my students, and I really do think this is true. I think it's a profound technological shift. And it's the statement that we're entering the age where the micro world is no longer the privileged domain of biology. What do I mean by that? Well, recall at the beginning of the talk, I told you the story of me being an 8-year-old looking at a microscope. If you looked in a microscope up until about 10 years ago and something was moving around, it was alive. Like, no question. There weren't things humans knew how to build at that length scale that could move, make decisions, take actions. The only thing that satisfied those criteria was cells. Increasingly, that's not true. We're getting better and better and better at using nanotechnologies to build things that are small, that interact with that world, that shape it, that take actions. And in some sense, this is what robots are always good at, right? Is they're good at going to a place that humans in and of themselves can't go to. Trouble going to the bottom of the ocean, we have trouble going to Mars. But we learn about it and get there by building things to represent us in that world. I think that it's going to be an enormous opportunity for robotics to go not just anywhere, but to the place where life itself has chosen to organize itself, the length scale of cells. And so I'm super excited about the future and to come back and tell you more about the progress that we've made in this space. So thank you very much. Appreciate your attention. Thank you.